So we're here with Gil Hova. Hi, Gil. How are you doing?
Hi, hey Sam.
Good to see you again.
Great to be here.
And Gil actually might be one of the people who's been on the show the most. He's been on as a guest. He's been on as a guest at Gathering, and he's been on as a guest here.
And I video bombed someone last night.
Yes,
that's true.
He totally did video bomb somebody last night. He's never offered to guest host, though, has he?
Well, we'll just have to get him on as a guest host one time.
No, I'd love to.
Awesome. So we're here today to talk about Bad Medicine, Battle Merchants.
And one more.
Oh, right.
And one more.
Network.
Yes.
But most importantly, we're here to talk about design, game design, and things like that. So we shilled a little already. So let's talk about the design process. Go through Battle Merchants for me. How did you take what was already a good game, and actually an underappreciated game, I think. I think that more people actually need to try it. Give it a try. It may not be for you, but at least try it because there's some really innovative mechanics in there. How did you decide what you're taking out in order to make the expansion, which is a card replacement set, basically, right?
Yeah. I wanted to give some more options to the player. I wanted to increase the amount of replayability. So what happens is in the base game, there's a set of kingdom cards. And the kingdom cards adds all sorts of interesting spins to the game, because otherwise it would be a very rinse, lather, repeat affair.
Right.
And the base kingdom cards do a good job of shaking things up. And once the game came out, I felt like they did a good job at their job, but I felt like that was a direction that I could explore a little more, and that's what the expansion does. It explores this a little more. There's more kingdom cards, some of which you shuffle out. In the base game, you play with just all the kingdom cards, but in the expansion, you shuffle some out, which adds a whole bunch of replayability. Another thing is there are some new cards that do all sorts of really fun and thematic things. Like there's a dragon that squats on a space, but you need to build a really high level. It's called a Vorpal weapon for you Lewis Carroll or D&D fans.
Snicker snack.
Exactly. And only a Vorpal weapon can be sold to that space. And there's something that happens in case one of your weapons is tied with another, you automatically break a tie. People love that card. They just love breaking ties. And there's some cards that I figured, since I'm doing this and replacing the deck anyway, there's some cards that I felt like I could do something different than the original version of the game. So there's a couple of cards like Instigator and Scavenger that do slightly different things. And I'm really happy with how they're playing now. And there's even like two cards that are two halves of a broken ring, and each does an awesome thing. And when you put them together, it gets really, really good.
Yeah.
One ring rules them all.
But you don't know if both halves of the ring are in the game. You've got the left half, the right half might not be in the game.
Oh, okay, so
some cards are shuffled out.
Might not
maybe
perfect.
not. The left half is still good to have on its own. It's not like you get the left half and you're just sort of waiting. You still get a really cool thing.
Cool. So why wasn't that included in the original game?
Because in the original game, I was working on all the base systems, and I felt that I was working enough that on the base stuff that I brought the kingdom cards to a point where I thought they worked really well with the base. And once I got that fundamental start, it was in a good position to ship the game, and I was really happy with that. But now with the expansion, I could focus solely on the kingdom cards, and that's really what this expansion let me do.
And this is a question that our viewers often ask is, hey, do you design a game and then cut out things to make the expansion for later, to save it for later? Or did you make the game as good as it could get and then figure, oh, this could be better if I did things this way after getting some feedback from players and the publisher, etc., etc.? How did it work for you?
It depends on the game. For this particular game, it was the second thing, actually. I made it as good as I could, and then I realized after it came out, oh, what if I did this? And sometimes, it's usually like 48 hours after you approve the proof is, oh, what happens if I did this? That's generally how it works with games. I mean, but, it's... the base game I'm very proud of, but I realized, oh, there's all these things I could try, and there's so many things I wanted to try that I felt like there was a lot of room for the expansion. But my upcoming game, which we're about to talk about, is a case of the first. There's all sorts of things that I'm trying already that I didn't want to include in the base game, but we can talk about that in a sec.
Well, we'll talk about it right now.
Right now.
So in that case, we're talking about networks.
Yes.
Networks I play tested.
You played a very old version.
Yeah, like 2 years ago,
yeah,
right?
it's changed a lot.
And then Daryl played it at Unpub this year, and it's changed a bunch. So tell us about the iterative process about that. Tell us what you've cut out to keep it streamlined and then might be releasing later. And is this going to be kickstarted by Formal Ferret?
Let me go backwards.
Yes,
yes, it will be kickstarted by Formal Ferret. As for the process, like the whole iterative the Kickstarter is going to be in September. I think I'm going backwards.
Yeah, that's okay.
And as for the iterative process, I started on the core of this game a long time. It's a very long story about this game, probably longer than we have time for this interview.
That's okay.
But this has been an adaptation of an adaptation of adaptation. Like there's all sorts of generations, and I just sort of said, okay, I like this part of the game, so let me build a game around that. And then, okay, of the new game, I only like this part, so let me retheme that. And and eventually, I wound up in this game that really plays really, really well. It's just the iterations took me there. The game sort of guided me to where it wanted to go.
Great. So your game design process sounds like it's an emergent process. You find out what's fun by playtesting.
Follow the fun.
Follow the fun.
Oh yeah.
Follow your nose. It always knows. And then the table doesn't lie, and the people sitting around the table don't lie. You might not appreciate all the feedback that you're getting, but what they say is fun, what you think is fun, you kind of combine that together and say, okay, this is the new direction for this game. And it sounds like Network has really found its own feet.
Yes, the networks, in the end, actually, this was the opposite of how it usually goes. The networks wanted to be heavier. I wanted to be a more complex and involved game than I originally had. Even 2 years ago, I was presenting a game that was very streamlined, but it turns out it was just a skeleton that I could dangle more stuff on. And usually it's the opposite. Usually, like, I'm used to people starting with an overly complex game and then whittling things out and streamlining. In my case, I had streamlined so much that I needed to put some more gristle on there, put some more synergies in the game, and that really made the game sing. And now the game is almost done. There's maybe a couple of tweaks here and there, but...
Okay, so let's talk about this one, Bad Medicine. Now, this is an empty box, that's why I can lift it. I'm not very strong. How did this one come to be?
So that one, I was chatting with my girlfriend's dad, and he is a copywriter for Big Pharma, for advertising, and he mentioned that would be a fun theme for a game, just advertising drugs. And I thought originally this would be about naming drugs, then I realized the side effects and the description all play a role also. So it turned into a party game where the players are pharmaceutical companies coming up with awful drugs, and it's very, very funny.
Right. How do you feel making the move from being an employed person to being a freelancer and doing Kickstarters and game design? How did that happen?
There are a bunch of things that pushed me towards that. It wasn't just one thing. It was really a decision that I made because on one hand, I felt like my game designs were really taking me somewhere, and I was really excited and really happy about where my life was. And on the other hand, my professional life was really getting stagnant, and I really needed to shake things up and make a change. So I'm not full-time on game design. I wish I could be. I'm freelancing as a sound editor. Yeah, totally. I'm freelancing as a sound editor in the meantime, to pay the bills. But this has been such a blast to work on. I've had so much more flexibility, being able to carve out just a whole week for Origins as opposed to, scrounging up just a few vacation days. It really makes a difference.
And last question I have for you before we get to our very final question is, in regards to playtesting, carving out time, how do you run your playtest sessions?
It depends on where the game is. If it's an early session, I'll warn players, and usually at that point it's other designers. I'll say this is a really rough idea. We're just doing proof of concept here. In that case, I don't care about how the game looks. I don't even care about balance. I don't care if the game's unbalanced. I'm just looking for a general proof of concept. Is there a game here? I like to focus on core engagement. This is something that Kevin Nunn preaches, and I'm a very big believer in finding the core engagement. Like, what is the thing about your game that people are going to like, and following that. And a lot of times young designers have core engagements, like they have two of them and they clash with each other, and you have to find the one you prefer and stick with it, and everything in the game points to that. Then later on, maybe then I can start say, okay, the core works, now let me start balancing things out. Okay, now the balance works, let's try to start breaking things and just doing weird stuff, like totally unexpected stuff that you never thought would work but suddenly works great. And then after that, then you start looking at art and iconography and things like that. So, I have one playtester in my group who's a really, really sweet guy, but he always comments on the art no matter what stage. He always tells you what he thinks of the art, and I always have to remind him it's not really useful at this point, but that's really what I look at, and it's
Great.
A very iterative process, and I'm focusing on a different thing, like I'm building from the foundation up.
Good. And last question, because we're at Origins, is this your first booth?
This is my first booth where I'm accepting money from customers.
And how does that feel?
That feels pretty strange, but pretty great. It's a lot more planning. I have to have help in the booth, so now I've got somebody else helping me. He's demoing the games while I'm often gallivanting and doing this. Yeah. Being convivial and all. But
I like that word, convivial.
It's really great.
That's a good word.
But it's really, it's been great, and to have people like walk up to me and say, "Battle Merchants was awesome." One guy in the elevator says, "Yeah, I love Battle Merchants." Didn't even know that I designed it. It was just such a weird and great moment,
Awesome.
So it's just a moment of so people really the people who have played Battle Merchants have really enjoyed it, and so it's just a matter of getting people to sit down and play it. Not because it's weird or anything, just because there's so many games out there, and I'm not Stronghold, I'm not Taste Your Minstrel, I'm not a big company yet, or even a medium-sized company. I'm really the small fry, so it takes me that extra level of work to get people to sit down. But once they sit down, they enjoy themselves. It's that challenge, just getting them to stop.
Excellent. And that's it for us, actually. Perfect timing. Let's stop it there.